everybody. Welcome into Perspectives. Today, a little something different. You know, it was back in 2011 when we first did the interview you were about to see, and we thought it would be good to bring it up again because it was about this time of year. And it's an interview with Roy Clark, the only man to ever play 2 concerts at their request in the Soviet Union, 2 separate trips to Russia with his full entourage. Also, there was a time when Roy owned a big chunk of the Tulsa Drillers, he and a Tulsa businessman. And he told me once, just before we taped this interview you're about to see, that he had a decision he had to make, baseball or music. He chose music, and we're all better off because of it. Here now, from the vault of Perspectives, the interview with Roy Clark. It's good to have you with us.
It's great to be with you, Sam. Thank you.
To be able to sit with you like this is a real honor.
Well, bless your heart.
Let's go back to the beginning, if you don't mind, because we only got a half hour and there's no way to compress everything you've done into 30 minutes. You came to us from Virginia.
Right.
From the D.C. area. And what's intriguing to me is there's a bit of a dichotomy here in that you started out very early playing guitar, banjo, got $2 a pop for playing for your dad at his dances at night, then dropped out of school because you liked music more than you liked school. And with that track record, you ended up with a Doctor of Letters from 2 different schools. You've had a school named for you. You're in 3 halls of fame. And it's the most amazing track record I've ever seen on an entertainer.
Well, one of the things is I'm a pro-educational person. I think most of the problems that we have in this world today is the lack of education. If people were aware and could understand through education just what makes this world tick, we wouldn't have all the problems that we have now. So anytime I can be involved with education and young people, I'm the first one in line.
What a great legacy. You owe a great deal to, and I'm not telling you anything, you already know this, but you owe a great deal to a lot of folks who are known names in the industry. Wanda Jackson, who, by the way, says to tell you hello.
Oh, bless her
She was here just a couple of weeks ago. But she was talking about you and said at the time that you all worked together, really when you first hit the stage, not many folks knew who Roy Clark was. And all of a sudden, you just exploded.
Well, I'd like to, not being overly humble, but I think my success was I was doing things that no one else was doing. They didn't know what I was going to do or where it was going to lead. And so when I come busting out on stage, out of pure, I don't want to say ignorance, but not knowing that I couldn't do this, I did it. And people in the audience were just like, in fact, Wanda had so much to do with me being where I am today, because it was because of her that took me out of D.C. I was at the top of my game there. And in Washington, I had done local radio, local television, and had reached the top. And then here come Wanda, forming a band to open in Las Vegas, and 2 mutual friends brought her out to a club that I was working and to hear me, and she offered me a job to go to front her band and go to Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. Well, that's the first time I'd crossed the Mississippi River. And so we went to Las Vegas. Through Wanda, I met her manager, Jim Halsey. And so when Wanda disbanded, Jim came up to me and said, I think you have a great career in store for you, and I'd like to be part of it. Well, he was the first one ever said anything like that and then followed through.
I got something I want to read. Now, well, since we're talking about Jim Halsey, hang with me on this.
Okay.
Hank Thompson introduced Wanda Jackson to the world, and after Wanda made it, she helped usher in another new star, one who would become one of my biggest stars and dearest friends. Wanda described him as a multi-talented musician, singer, and showman, and when I saw him play his first concert with her, I saw she'd been conservative in her description. He turned out to be all that she'd said and a whole lot more. He connected with his audience like nobody had ever seen, and to this day I have not seen a greater talent. And his name is Roy Clark.
Whoa.
Jim Halsey said that. How to make it in the music business. Elvis Presley had Colonel Parker. They weren't what you would consider friends. This is a different situation. Along comes Jim Halsey, that meets up with Roy Clark, and arm in arm, they break records around the world. In your opinion, would there have been a Roy Clark that we know today without Jim Halsey?
To be as honest as I can be, no. No, because we are a team, and we are more than, when I say Jim Halsey is my manager, I hesitate because that doesn't seem like adequate of how we are in our association. And I would like to think I would have had some kind of success, but not, no, not what Jim and I have done. Been all over the world, been to Russia, been to Bulgaria, been to Belgium, been to the Far East, and that was all Halsey, Mr. Halsey. He's the one that dreamed up these dreams, and then pointed to me and told me I was going to do them. I said, well, I would planned on going fishing, but I just really left it up to him, and looking back on it now, he didn't steer me wrong.
How many trips did you make to Russia? How many?
Made two.
Made two. Well, the first one, then, I'm trying to get the time frame right. The first one was before the Mikhail Gorbachev invitation, right?
Exactly.
And then
we did it in 1976. We did it, that's when the Iron Curtain was really obvious, and it was just another world over there. First time that we'd been behind the Iron Curtain, and no one spoke to any. They didn't speak to each other, let alone foreigners. But then we went back in 1988.
Okay, before we get to that one,
Okay.
when you walked out on stage that first night, and there's a sea of Russian faces, probably not many smiles. What's going through your mind?
Really, it's not that I have faith in my ability. It's just that that's what I came there for. Let's do it. We came to do a show, and let's do it. And when we got through, when we were in the middle of our first tune, the whole place erupted.
Mr. Halsey says, watching from the wings, he saw a transformation that took place in 30 seconds, from grim, oppressed people to suddenly warm and embracing.
Really.
Because of you.
Really. When we left, we had the whole last page of Pravda, the newspaper. And we had friends at the embassy there that said, and that came out before we left. And at the embassy they said, you'll never know in your lifetime the good that you have done. First of all, Pravda does not talk about artists that were there until after they've left. The fact that they printed this whole back page, that usually they would say, the Americans came, they played, they left, instead of a whole page of, and they called us boys and girls, that had come and made their music here.
Mikhail Gorbachev invited you and Billy Joel and Stevie Wonder. I mean, that had to come as a shock.
Oh,
you.
really? Yeah.
You were living in Tulsa by then?
In 1976, we left living in Virginia, and when we came back, we were living in Tulsa. So that was like...
Actually, your wife was here with the furniture, as I understand it.
She was telling them where to put the chair. Right.
While you were out doing music and entertaining for the folks in Russia. When you made the tour, it was the Roy Clark Friendship Tour.
Mm-hmm.
And by then, the Russian people knew who Roy Clark was and knew what he was all about. And the concerts were sold out. Absolutely
sold out. In fact, they were selling ticket black market, and the Soviet government was looking and trying to catch people buying tickets on street corners. You know, they were like hyping a football game, and all of this is going on, and we didn't know anything about it because we were busy with the politicians, you know, howdying with them, and letting them know what a pleasure it is for us to be in their beautiful country. I made the mistake. I was on the Tonight Show, and Carson was asking me about the trip to Russia. And I said, one of the things is, I said, their water, especially in St. Petersburg, is really bad. Well, there were some Russians watching that night, and I got some pretty bad letters that me bad-mouthing their country. I didn't mean it that way. I meant they knew they had a problem, you know. And the fact that I brought it up though didn't sit well with them.
You know, it's interesting you bring up the Tonight Show. You were a favorite of Johnny Carson's, and you weren't on there just once. You were on there several times, and you also hosted
for a week, yeah,
for Carson, which was really unusual to have somebody from your genre come in and host the Tonight Show. How did that come about?
It's just that he and I went back to working a couple state fairs together, and we just hit it off. It was one of those things like, I don't know if he was with us today, if he knew, but there was a thing that could go unsaid or said that the other would know what he was talking about. And he, I had an open door. I was told that anytime I was on the West Coast, call and they'd put me on. If they had someone that lived in California, they could put him off or her off until till another date, knowing that I lived, you know, back in the Midwest. And one thing led to another.
You broke down a barrier when you located in Branson. Now that was a big deal for its time.
It was, and I had never been to Branson when this whole thing started.
Why'd you pick it? Why'd you build there?
Rodney Lay, who is a dear friend of mine and played in the band forever, he and his wife had gone to Branson on their honeymoon. And different people were talking about Branson. I'd hear Branson here, Branson there, to where I started asking, what is Branson? What is it? Well, the closest they could come to someone who had never been there is that it's like Las Vegas without gambling. I said, I see. So I finally went over there. A mutual friend said he was going to build a theater over there. Well, the third part of our trio of friendship said he was getting ready to build this theater, and why don't you call it the Roy Clark Theater? And this is all happening without me being involved. And so they did. They got my okay, and we started in 1982, and we had the first celebrity theater meaning that we were the first theater that booked in nationally known talent. All the other theaters there were family, the Presleys, the Ball-Knobbers, and all of them. It was generations of family that performed in their own theater.
Ed Branson exploded shortly after that.
Shortly after that, Mel Tillis was one of the first. He said, "Why am I working for Roy Clark when I'm going to build a theater of my own?" And most of the people who later built their own theaters are the ones that had been guests at our theater. And they all came in, took a look around, and they started. This Mickey Gilley, Boxcar Willie, Ray Stevens, Glenn Campbell, you name it, they come in and built their own theaters.
You know, I'm just dancing around here because there's some things I've got to ask you about. Now, hang with me on this. Jimmy Dean fired you once, many years ago. Why was that?
Because I was late one too many times. I was, if he said be there at 8 o'clock, I figured if you were there at 8:10, 8:15, that's pretty close. But not to him. If he said 8 o'clock, he meant 8 o'clock. And he put up with me longer than anyone else would ever put up with. And finally, it was on a Sunday morning. We were playing there was a selling appliances, a warehouse sale, come in and buy a washer and dryer and this, and they had hired Jimmy to draw people in. And so he said, "Don't take it out of the case," meaning my guitar. And I said, "Come on, Jim, let me play a little bit." And he said, I said, "Don't take it out of the case." So I figured he was serious, and we'd talk about it later. Well, he did fire me, and that was it. But one day he put his arm around my shoulder.
Go ahead.
And he said, "You're going to be a big star one of these days, but right now, I can't afford you."
He said later that you were the most talented individual he ever fired.
Yeah, he did say that.
You guys became fast friends, didn't you?
We never had an argument.
Yeah.
Never, even when he fired me. And, you know, he just said, I can't afford you.
People seem to respond to a warmth and a caring deep inside you, much more so than they do other entertainers. And I don't think you bother to cover it up. You let them see it. But the songs, and I've made a short list here, these songs are powerful in the way that they're written and the way that you performed them. Yesterday When I Was Young, I Never Picked Cotton, Come Live With Me, Somewhere Between Love and Tomorrow, Thank God and Greyhound, The Tips of My Fingers. Every one of those songs that turned out to be a hit for you was powerful in its meaning.
I've always been lyric-minded, the story. That's what I never ever recorded a song that I said, this is going to be a hit. I hope it's a hit. I just did it because it was already a hit to me. It was something I wanted to do. And fortunately, on occasion, there was others that felt the same way. I had some of them didn't really care.
Well, there's one I want to ask you about. It's the Lawrence Welk Hee Haw Counter-Revolution Polka.
Right.
Tell me about that.
Von Horton, who is passed, wrote that. He also wrote Mockingbird Hill and a lot of great standards and things. But when CBS dropped Hee Haw, they also dropped Lawrence Welk off of television. So Vaughn sat down, and he's one of those that could write a song like that. And the fact that Hee Haw and Lawrence Welk had both been dropped from their respective television outlets, that he sat down and wrote Hee Haw Counter-Revolution Polka. And the story is, it's like a dig to the networks that dropped us off the air. You know, if you listen to the lyrics, it really
I did.
says a lot.
As I did, I could see somewhere off to one side the Smothers Brothers cheering you on.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, go Roy.
Yeah, really.
What a hoot. The whole concept of Hee Haw was kind of a spin-off of Laugh-In.
Mm-hmm.
Rowan Martin's Laugh-In was big,
Very.
and somebody came up with the idea of Hee Haw. Hee Haw went 20 years
25 in production.
in
yeah.
production, yeah.
Yeah.
But what in the world happened there? Did you have any concept or any inkling at all it was going to be that successful?
I was a guest on the Jonathan Winters show. And during a break, there were two gentlemen walked up and said, could we have a moment of your time? They introduced themselves as John Aylesworth and Frank Pepiot,
Whoa,
producers from Canada.
yeah.
And they said, we have an idea for a television show, not unlike Laugh-In, fast-paced, a lot of corny jokes, and a lot of music. Now we have talked to Buck Owens, and he says that he's for at least listening to, and so it was dropped. And because I said yes, I'm interested in doing it. Because you say yes in this business to everything, because a lot of it never happens. Well, that was in September of 1968. In around January of 1969, Jim Halsey called me and said they're ready to go with that television show. I said, they're ready to go with what television show? He said, well, they're calling it Hee Haw. I said, they're calling what Hee Haw? He said, well, that's just a working title. By the time the show goes on the air, they'll come up with an appropriate name. Looking back on it, what could have been more appropriate than Hee Haw?
You know, we're a minute and a half away from having to let you go, which I really am sorry to see. But like everybody else, I got a bucket list. On that list is I want to spend the afternoon in Willie Nelson's bus. The other thing I want to do is sit and talk to Roy Clark. I can't tell you what a pleasure this has been. And I got one more question that I want to ask you, and we're going to close it out. And we only got a short time for you to answer it. If you had it to do all over again, any decision you made that you'd redo, anything you'd change?
I think, and I've said this over and over to myself, I would have worked harder at it at the beginning. I sort of coasted, and I've had a lot of great people that have just been behind me and given me courage when I didn't doubt myself, but I just, in a way, was thinking, what makes you think that you're going to go up against all this talent and come out on top? And I think I would have worked harder. But on the other hand, I think the way the things worked out is the way it was planned to be. And I couldn't have changed it.
Well, you've given us so much. And there are a lot of folks out there who, if they had the chance, would say, hey, Roy, thanks. Good job.
Well, that's very kind and very nice.
And a lot of kids out there today who are saying, this is the way Roy would do it, or this is the way Roy might play it, or Roy might sing it. I've never seen fingers as fast as yours, by the way. You're beyond a legend, and we are very grateful for you taking the time to visit with us here at Rogers State.
You're a nice man, Sam.
Thank you, my friend.
And that was Roy Clark from 2011. We hope you enjoyed it from our vault, and we'll see you back here next time.